These are the new budget-friendly earbuds from Nothing, the Nothing Ear A earbuds, but why did Nothing make them, and are they too good to be true? Let's find out. What's up, internet? I'm Brian McDuff, aka BMac, and welcome to another video. So yes, indeed, these are the Nothing Ear A earbuds, the new budget-friendly earbuds from Nothing Tech. But I know what you're wondering, what's the catch? How are these budget-friendly, and what kind of features are they offering with them being budget-friendly earbuds? That's what we're gonna discuss. First things first, I do need to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Nothing for actually sending out a pair of these Nothing Ear A's for me to be able to check out and enjoy. So Nothing, thank you. I appreciate you. But with that having been said, let's just get right into it here and start things out with the design of the Nothing Ear A earbuds and how these babies are looking on the outside. The first thing you're probably gonna notice right off the bat is how similar the Nothing Ear A's look to their bigger, pricier sibling, the Nothing Ears. They have the same stem style earbud design, and of course with this classic Nothing see-through look, which I've personally come to love. And we do actually have 3 colors that the Nothing Ear A's are available in. We of course have the classic white color, a stylish black color, and a pretty sharp looking bumblebee-like color combination here with black and yellow. The drivers in the Ear A's are made out of a PMI and TPU material, which can be considered a step down from the more premium ceramic material that the drivers are made out of in the Nothing Ears, but more on how that translates into actual sound quality in just a few minutes. To top all this off, you are also getting an earbud IP54 dust and water resistance rating with an IPX2 water resistance rating in the case itself. So a lot of similarities here in terms of looks and feel and design with the Nothing Ear A's compared to the Nothing Ears. But what about connectivity and performance? Is this where the sacrifices have been made in the Nothing Ear A's? Well, you are once again getting a lot of the higher end connectivity and performance features that you're getting in the Nothing Ears in the Nothing Ear A's, but again, at a budget-friendlier price point. However, there are some differences that are definitely worth noting. The Nothing Ear A's do support Bluetooth 5.3, which also supports the higher end codecs, which honestly, once again, is rather surprising to see here in the budget-friendly offering from Nothing in these earbuds. You're also getting Bluetooth multipoint here with dual connections possible through the Nothing companion app. So another thing to be happy about here, and to actually control the earbuds, you do have the same pinch gesture controls on each individual earbud, just like you do on the Nothing Ears, and just like we had on the Nothing Ear 2s, which, as I personally mentioned before, I'm a pretty big fan of. I think that they are much better than any kind of tap controls, so I love the pinch gestures. And these pinch gestures are gonna give you single, double, and triple pinch gestures, with also a single pinch and hold and a double pinch and hold gesture that is gonna allow you to completely customize your entire earbuds listening experience right from within the Nothing Companion app. And speaking of the Nothing Companion app, by the way, you'll notice as soon as you open it up, you're gonna immediately see the battery levels, your equalizer settings, and of course those pinch controls we were just talking about, as well as your noise control and bass enhance settings. You can also take things a step further by updating the firmware, turning on in-ear detection, activating low lag mode for gaming, configuring your multi-point dual connectivity, or even testing out your ear tip fit. One thing to point out here, you aren't getting that personal sound profile feature like you're getting in the Nothing Ears, which is where you can literally take a hearing test with the earbuds in your ears to get a custom sound profile specifically tailored for you and your listening tastes. But if you plan on listening to your music with that higher resolution LDAC codec, that's gonna actually disable the personal sound profile anyway, so in a way, not having the personal sound profile here, somewhat of a non-issue. And if you're concerned about microphone quality, here's a quick little demo of how that sounds. This is what the microphone quality sounds like on the Nothing Ear A earbuds. This is raw audio recorded directly into the Voice Memos app, so hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea of what you can expect. So connectivity-wise, we're getting almost as much as we're getting in the more expensive Nothing Ear earbuds, which is again, so awesome to see here considering the fact that the Nothing Ear A's are the budget-friendly offering of the same earbuds. But I know the big question here, what about sound quality? Is this where the Nothing Ear A earbuds fall apart, or is this where they actually start to shine? I'm just gonna say it right away here, the Nothing Ear A's sound pretty darn great. You have a very nice full body sound with a nice separation of instruments and detail and clarity throughout the entire frequency range, with the ability to get a fair amount of clean bass built in to whatever it is you're listening to, especially if you're using that bass enhance feature we were mentioning earlier, which does make the bass overall sound richer, fuller, and more impactful, while at the same time not noticeably taking away from the mids and the highs. But with that having been said, right out of the box, I am gonna admit here that I did find the trebles to be just a little bit too aggressive for my taste, but a quick little dial back of that with that 3-band EQ adjustment within the companion app that we were talking about earlier seemed to mitigate that a little bit, and after that, things sounded pretty darn solid. Overall, there is a somewhat more artificial or slightly tinny sound, if you will, in the Nothing Ear A's, but I wanna stress here, this was really only noticeable when I was directly comparing them to the Nothing Ears and going back and forth, which is of course to be expected, but I gotta admit, the Nothing Ear A's sound pretty darn good, and it's pretty darn close to the sound that you would get out of the Nothing Ears. You got a lot going on for you with these as it relates to sound quality that I think you would be pretty proud of. On top of what I think is overall great sound quality, you are also getting ANC, or active noise cancellation, and transparency modes on the Nothing Ear A's, but how are those actually performing? I think it's safe to say that the Ear A's have solid ANC performance that I'm accepting, even if it's not the best ANC experience that I've ever had on a pair of earbuds, but it's definitely strong enough and reliable enough for me to be happy with it. Now, the exact same thing could pretty much be said for the transparency mode of the Nothing Ear A's. It's there and it works, it's just not quite as transparent as some of the other transparency modes that I've experienced on other earbuds. So at the end of the day, you have solid sound quality, solid ANC, and solid transparency modes here on the Nothing Ear A's, all of which is solid to see in a budget-friendly offering in a pair of earbuds, delivering pretty darn close of an experience to that of which the Nothing Ears delivers. But with all these features and all these modes we're talking about here, how long could I actually expect them to last for? What's the battery life looking like in the Nothing Ear A's? Well, truth be told, this is where things actually get a little interesting, considering the Ear A's actually have slightly better battery life than that of the more expensive Nothing Ears. On paper, you'll immediately see that the Nothing Ear A's are actually capable of up to 5.5 hours of ANC listening time on a full charge, with a total of around 24.5 hours of listening time when you include the charging case itself, which also translates to around 9.5 hours of non-ANC listening time, or around 42.5 hours of non-ANC listening time when you're including that charging case. This definitely hits the minimum battery life numbers that I look for in a pair of earbuds, and once again, awesome to see here in a budget-friendly offering. And when it comes time to recharge the charging case itself, you could do so through the USB-C connection, but one thing to point out here, one corner that was cut, if you will, is the inability to actually recharge the charging case itself via a wireless charger. So if that's something you wanna do, just be able to take your earbuds and pop them on a wireless charger and charge them up that way like you could do with the Nothing Ears, that is one difference between these two earbuds, which is allowing this to be the budget-friendly version. But even then, if your Nothing Ear A's are completely dead, you just pop them into their charging case and you're gonna get a couple hours of ANC listening playback performance on just a few minutes of charge. So if you're ever in a bind, you're covered there. But with all this having been said, here are my final thoughts on the Nothing Ear A's and whether or not they're worth looking at, or if you should just go for the more expensive Nothing Ear option. I just wanna say here, it's pretty cool to see a new budget-friendlier offering here from Nothing with their earbuds with this A branding like we've seen with Nothing before, also with other brands. So I was very excited to see these and test them out. But what's surprising to me is that if you just put these in my hand and I tested them out without knowing what their branding was or their price point was, I would not believe if you told me these were budget friendly. They just feel like such a more premium pair of earbuds, jam-packed with so many features, that I still have a hard time actually fully embracing these as budget friendly just because of the performance, even though their price tag does make them very much budget friendly. I mean, you're just getting so much in the Nothing Ear A's of what you're usually getting in pricier flagship earbud offerings. You're getting everything from solid sound quality to solid ANC performance, solid transparency modes, to a nearly identical function and design, even a marginally better battery life in the Nothing Ear A's compared to the more expensive Nothing Ears. The only real sacrifices here are a slightly inferior earbuds driver material with a slightly less beefier chipset, which does result in a slightly less natural sound profile, but one that still sounds overall great. And no wireless charging for charging up the charging case itself, but when you put all those together, bigger picture here, I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot of budget-friendly drawbacks or shortcomings that you usually see in a budget-friendly pair of earbuds. And I think with that in mind, the Nothing Ear A's are going to be my go-to recommendation for budget-friendly pairs of earbuds for the foreseeable future, because they just check so many boxes to be happy about. If you wanna see the latest deals, prices, promos, and information for the Nothing Ear A's, you can of course always head to my affiliate link, bmac.link/nothingeara, or as always, there's gonna be clickable links in the video description box and in the comment section below, so check those out. I'm gonna go rock out with these babies right now. My goodness, I still can't believe these are budget friendly. Just, if you're thinking about getting these, get them. Stamp of approval from me, no question. I will see you guys in my next video.